people out there.
Yeah, I think they're the live user.
Oh. Cool. Welcome everyone to today's information session. So just before we start, just a reminder as usual that this is being live streamed as a workshop. So it's open to the public, but it's for staff to provide guidance to elected members, and it's not a forum for debate or for decisions. So it's an information session, and it's also not a forum for public to provide input or to bring other matters to the attention of council. But if a member of the public does want to provide input, please talk to staff and they can help you to have your say. We want to hear from everyone eventually. Okie dokes, we've got an apology for absence from the Mayor Major and Councillor Goff. Are there any other apologies that haven't been listed? Councillor MacDonald. Is there anyone on Zoom?
I'm here on Teams today.
Oh, it's Tyrone, yeah.
And Tyler.
Tyler. Okay, so they're there listening in. Who said that? Oh, you're here. Yeah, I can see you, Tim. Thank you. Thanks for the reminder. Okay, and so also item 3 about the underground assets register has been postponed because the presenter is unwell. Bit of that going around. Right, so we'll launch straight into the items, and first one is Plan Change 21, Central City Noise, Pre-Notification Engagement, Consultation, Feedback. Now, we got Liz White. Yep, hi Liz. Hannah Ballantyne and Darren, welcome. That's all, so fire ahead. The ball's in your court.
Kia ora, councillors. Thank you for having us here today. We last spoke to you about Central City Noise on the 27th of May. That was ahead of the pre-notification engagement. We discussed the options that we had reviewed and the preferred option at that point in time. That was with Holly.
Darren, could you please? Yeah, oh, thanks, Megan.
Sorry about that. So I'm here today with Liz White, the planning consultant, who has been working with Holly on that plan change, and Hannah Ballantyne from the engagement team. Our pre-notification engagement ran from the 25th of June to the 3rd of August. So we're going to jump into that now. Liz and Hannah will go through that and the feedback received during that engagement period. And obviously we'll be happy for any questions afterwards. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll get to the end and we'll have the questions at the end. Okay. Thank you, Liz. Far away.
Kia ora koutou. So I'm Liz White, so I've been assisting Holly, as Darren said. So just initially, this is what we're going to cover off today. The first 4 things are essentially a kind of a recap. So they're to do with the things that we've already presented to you on previously leading up to the engagement. I'm going to run through those pretty quickly. That's just to provide some context, a bit of a refresh on that, and then focus basically on the summary of the feedback that's then been received. So I will try and whip through that reasonably quickly. So just to recap on Plan Change 21 itself, so we're really talking about the noise framework for the central city. So we're looking at the district plan provisions relating to noise, and particularly in terms of entertainment activities or particularly music venues and how they're managed in the central city. Some of the issues that we're looking to address that have arisen from the current framework relate to the conflicts arising between noisier activities and residential activities, and particularly in mixed-use zones where you have a mix of both. The other issue is around the noise limits being too restrictive currently for music venues that have established not in the main area where they were anticipated. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. And the third thing there is about the impact on older residential activities. So you have some newer residential activities with insulation, but it's those older ones established before that. So what we're really seeking, I guess, with that is to provide for a vibrant nighttime economy, but also balancing that with protection of sleep for residential activities. So current approach, so there's 3 noise categories. So the green one there is category 1, that's the highest. Category 2 is that central area and up the spine of Victoria Street. The remainder of the city's category 3, and then on top of that you've also got the stadium noise contours. So just looking at those, category 1's the highest noise limit currently, so it's 60 decibels, In the nighttime period, category 2, 50 decibels. That's also split into 2 areas, and then the other area of the central city is 45. So category 1's the highest, that's 60 decibels is roughly equivalent to what some of the other cities in New Zealand have. Category 2's a bit more modest, and category 3 is still a residential, it provides for a residential level of noise, but it is an inner city residential level of noise, so it's still louder than the suburban noise limits. Current installation requirements. So in the category 1 area, there isn't a requirement because a consent's required on a case-by-case basis. The highest level of insulation is required in those other categories there. So category 2, category 3 where it immediately joins precinct 1 and in the stadium contour areas. So that requires facade reduction for bedrooms of 35 decibels. And then outside those areas, there's a slightly lower level of insulation requirement for category 3 that's within a commercial zone or within 75 metres of the other categories. There's also some road noise requirements, so they're a bit separate, but it's just a reminder that they are there as well. And for the other areas of category 3 that are essentially not covered by the above, there is not currently a requirement for additional noise insulation. So just going to give you a summary now of what the preferred option was that we engaged on. So spatially, that's a picture of it there. So the orange is category 1, so you'll see that expands the category 1 area to encompass those areas where that high level of insulation is already required. So it's essentially the category 2, the existing category 1 plus the category 2 areas. We also, as a result of councillor feedback, included the possibility of adding on some areas, so in that St Asaph Street area and also out the east to Fitzgerald Avenue. In those spatial areas, the approach that we engaged on would see an increase in the category 1 area to 65 decibel, an increase in the category 2 areas to 60 decibel, and essentially retaining the status quo for the category 3 areas. So it's a two-prong approach. So we have an expansion of the areas to reflect the insulation requirements currently, but also have an increase in the noise levels in those areas. That was based on feedback from the acoustic consultants around what level of noise the existing insulation requirements would mitigate to allow for that sleeping level. So this is just a summary slide about that preferred approach. So I've talked about the thing in the left column. So just the reason that was preferred is we consider it better provides for entertainment venues. There's more certainty and flexibility for venues. So by expanding those areas, there's obviously greater flexibility to establish in areas, and there's more certainty for those venues that are outside the current category 1 area, but under this preferred approach would have a higher limit and then be included in either the category 1 or category 2 area. There is very limited change to the installation requirements, so it stays the same, it's targeted. The exception would be if those areas are included in that category 1 area, the installation requirement in those areas would need to accordingly be increased. It's acknowledged that the key trade-off with this approach is the impact that those higher limits could have on existing residential properties that were established before the insulation requirements. But one of the things we did tag in the preferred approach was the possibility that we could refine it to exclude pockets of existing older residential activities. So as an overall concept, it's matching to the current insulation requirements, but the idea that we could refine that down essentially where we know it's going to have the more of a negative impact on those existing. So just in terms of the other options that were considered, so I'm not going to go into detail because I think Holly did quite a lot around that last time. But obviously there's the status quo, which is no change. We also considered a more conservative change to boundaries, so essentially just expanding to include some existing venues, but not much further. And then we also kind of looked at the other extreme of increasing the noise limits across the whole central city, effectively having one zone. So I'll pass to Hannah.
I'll get into the engagement. So I can take that. So in 2023, we undertook a Central City noise survey to understand people's expectations around noise in the Central City. This was to inform regulatory and non-regulatory interventions, and we received 3,399 responses. And the results of this survey provided the basis for developing this draft district plan change, which was the regulatory intervention. Once a preliminary plan was developed, we opened pre-notification consultation, which started on the 25th of June and ran until the 3rd of August this year. The Kōrero Mai Let's Talk webpage had over 5,000 views throughout the consultation period, and we received feedback from 1,429 organisations and businesses. And I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you for the people who participated in this engagement exercise, some of whom are behind me. Throughout the consultation period, we ran 2 webinars and attended a couple of in-person meetings. So we wanted to see if this preliminary plan was on the right track, and 87% of respondents said yes, it was. We heard from quite a few live music venues, artists and sound businesses who all supported the proposed plan change, including the locations and limits and insulation requirements. Other Central City businesses had mixed views. There's more detail of that in the report. Central City residents groups, on the other hand, didn't believe that their neighbourhood should be included within the louder noise categories. In addition to this, submitters who live within the Central City were less likely to support the changes than those living outside of the Central City. So within the Central City, there was support from 66% of those supported, versus in other suburbs, it was between 88 and 95% support. That nicely transfers into this plotted map, which shows where support was and wasn't within the Central City. So the red is those who didn't support the plan change, and I'd probably like to draw your attention to a decent cluster around the Victoria Street area, which was the most controversial in that area of the city. There was also a bit around the stadium. We also asked about the 2 key aspects of the proposal, and here you can see that 81% thought that we had the limit and insulation requirements right, and 86% thought we had the locations right. On the locations, we didn't just want to know if people thought the areas were wrong, we wanted to know where they could be improved in their opinion. So when we asked what areas should be included that aren't currently, the results were a little bit disparate. I tried to group where was appropriate. So 8 requested for all areas within the 4 AVs to be included in the Category 1 area or have no limit. A few for St Asaph Street, and there was some areas outside of scope of the Central City. But then when we asked what areas shouldn't be included that currently are, 31 said the area around Victoria Street, and some the residential East Frame neighbourhoods, which, all that could have been smooth, couldn't it? Still be. Doing really well here. I'm giving it a hard press.
That's what I've
There we go. Which is shown on that plan there. Can you go to the next one for me? Thanks. And then we asked overall what you liked about the plan and what they didn't. So submitters supported the plan for reasons such as that it supports the nighttime businesses and or economy, including live music venues, that it supports vibrancy and or nightlife within the Central City, that it supports Christchurch's arts and culture scene. They felt like it struck a balance between supporting both businesses and residents, and there's a few more of those key themes on the analysis that you've been provided with. And then submitters were critical of the plan for reasons such as the feeling that the noise limits were too low or should be increased further. And then on the flip side, that it could affect the quality of life or comfort of Central City residents, that residents were there first and or should be prioritised, and that increased noise would affect the health of Central City residents. That's it from the engagement point of view.
So I just wanted to briefly mention the plan stop legislation. So I understand that this is something that you're going to discuss tomorrow at the council meeting, but obviously we're here to talk to you about a plan change today, so it's important to acknowledge that. So the impact of that legislation being introduced is that plan changes can't be notified unless they have either an automatic exemption or an exemption application is made and granted, in order for the plan change to be notified in the next 2 years. So this plan change wouldn't fall within the automatic exemptions, and therefore it would need to be subject to gaining an approval from MFE. So that will be discussed, as I understand it, tomorrow. So I'm not going to dwell on that, but obviously that has an impact on the time frame.
Just add, obviously we're having a discussion session prior to tomorrow, immediately after this session as well.
So in terms of next steps, obviously that has an impact in terms of needing to first seek an exemption. So I think previously the intention was to come back to the council after the engagement with a request to notify the plan change. Obviously we can't do that because of this legislation. The advantage is that there was an awful lot of feedback received, so it gives us a bit more time to analyse that in detail, and unless and until that exemption is granted, and then we can bring essentially the plan change back to the council for notification. So yeah, it gives us more time to take a detailed analysis of that feedback, seek some more specific input from our technical experts, and then essentially refine or look at the actual provisions with the preferred approach, and prepare the Section 32 report, which is the analysis that sits with the plan change. So the intention is essentially, subject to the council agreeing to seek an exemption and that being granted, is then the plan change would be brought back with a request to notify as soon as that's possible. So,
Right, on to questions. Kelly, you had one. Anyone else? Andrew?
Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for the work you're doing. 65 decibels, how does that compare to other cities in New Zealand? Is that the highest? It sounded like there were other places that had potentially higher. And just, I guess for context, 107 people interested in seeing it go higher.
So based on the analysis that was done by the acoustic consultants, the other cities more sit around that 60 decibel mark. So 65 would be higher, but it is important. It's not quite comparing apples with apples, because for each rule it depends on the time frame that you're measuring. It depends on whether that includes a thing called special audible characteristics or not. But in general terms, 65 would be higher than the other cities based on the current limits.
Yeah, and just a follow-up question around enforcement, really. Is that a subjective thing, or do compliance officers carry meters? Because my understanding in cases that have come up in the suburbs, that it's sort of an objective thing, decision. Yes. So do they use decibel meters, is what I want to know.
So there's two things going on with enforcement. There's the level that's in the district plan, the one that sets your maximum over a set period or any one individual point within that period. So that's the LAEQ, the kind of measured over 15-minute intervals.
Yeah.
And then the LA max that's measured within those 15-minute intervals, and those might be slightly different, LA max being slightly higher. And then also you've got the RMA itself, which still sets it sets it's a difficult one to explain, but in essence, you still need to avoid adverse effects from noise, and an enforcement officer can still go to a place and determine that there might be harm arising from the noise that's happening. So it's still a balanced judgment to make. But if there's higher noise limits, then that will be part of the context of any decision taken.
Yeah, I'm just concerned because it doesn't sound like there's consistency. You know, if you've got somebody at the dark room playing, and an officer comes along and is, because of a complaint, but they don't have any objective data, they think it's too loud. Where does that leave us? That's what concerns me.
I think
I was going to add to what Darren said. The test in the RMA is unreasonable noise.
Yeah.
And so it is a professional assessment of what that unreasonable level is.
It's very similar to the effects being no more than minor.
Yeah, but then again, you're dealing with idiosyncrasies, and how consistently is that applied? Yeah.
We're going to move on.
Yeah, sure.
We've got Andre, Aaron, Tim, Jake and Sarah of time, and that's about it. Got 10 minutes. Fire away.
Thank you. Thank you for the excellent engagement work. Are we just able to bring up the slide which shows areas that support and don't support?
Try.
Yes. Awesome, thank you. So it's so I'm looking at, it looks like there's a few right by the stadium and Duck Central that don't support it. Couldn't possibly imagine where some of those submissions could have come from. Then there's area by Cranmer Square, unless there's another 6 month in camping out there. I think it should be fine for noise. But it seems to me like the only area left of contention is around that Victoria Street. That could maybe be ironed out as part of this process. That area there, are there current noise issues that are drawing complaints and notices? That would be super useful to know, because currently they're category 2 for the bars on Victoria Street. I'm just trying to get my head around, are the residents there concerned about what could come in future, or are they dealing with current noise issues that's leading to problems? Or is this more about, the 2011, 2012 times where there was a whole lot going on around that area?
Based on the feed, so I can't speak to the complaints, but based on the feedback, I think a lot of them said, this is paraphrasing, but we had to put up with a lot of unruly behaviour as a result of those bars post-earthquake.
Sure.
And we don't want our area to become like that on a permanent basis.
Yep.
And I think there's two aspects to that. I think there's the lived experience during that time, but I think it's also that the noise limit would increase from what it is currently. And so it's more about what's being proposed than what they're currently experiencing.
Sure, so they're not having issues with category 2 currently as it stands?
I don't think so, but I can't speak on behalf of enforcement, but that's based on what was provided in the feedback. That's kind of my understanding that that's the general concern.
Okay, no, that's helpful. Thank you very much.
Aaron?
Yeah, so mine's just around the actual volumes, and I still struggle, like on Kelly's point, that we have subjective testing, because a cop's not allowed to go, oh, you're going fast, here's a ticket. They can't take your car off you unless you're doing in excess of 50 over the speed limit or whatever. But and for reference, this room this morning during your speaking is 56 to 67 decibels while you're talking, and one of you peaked at 74. So yeah, I had my. So and that laugh then would have been much higher. And then vehicles, if you go to the NZTA website, are allowed to be 90 dB. So you can go 90 down a road. Motorcycles over 125 cc's is 100 dB.
Yeah, so Aaron, your question is around the decibel level. Can you ask it?
So there are all streets there that are allowed vehicles on that are allowed to be 90 decibels. But the venue next to it is only allowed to be 65, and even that is subjective.
But the question for staff.
Well,
turn it into a
then
question.
okay, how's it even legal for us to not use metering? I struggle with that. I can't see how you can say you can't run your business, but I'm just guessing how loud it is. The guy down the road thinks it's really loud, so that's why I'm here. And then the poor staff have got to turn up and go, well, I kind of think it kind of sounds loud now and then.
Darren, if you got a response, please,
Yeah.
because we're running out of time.
I mean, I appreciate what you're saying. Appreciate what you're saying about the road noise. Road noise is exempt from this. Although, I guess what I would say is the guy who comes out with his meter, that will be one factor of his judgment. Moving on, if we do get the plan changed through, we get the higher noise limits, then I think there's also an education kind of stage that needs to come into this as well, so that we can refine exactly how, you know, that process works.
So if say a staff member does use a meter and you can just have them on your phone and it's kind of clipping around 65 out on the street, what does he do then? Because he goes, I've got a complaint. We've got a venue with 100 people in it.
Hang on,
So
John's got a reply.
Yeah, so there's the after hours officers that attend noise complaints when they're made. If there's repeated noise complaints, then we have our council EHO officers that look into repeated complaints, and they have meters, they have expertise around assessing noise limits, noise exceedances, etc. So it gets a much more robust assessment by council staff. But there is that first protocol, which is an after-hours sort of noise complaint officer.
Okay, I've got to go to Tim. We've only got a couple of minutes left.
Yeah, but if...
Sorry, Aaron, it sounds like a separate briefing on that one.
What's that? Well, hopefully it gets challenged in court. Like, I really hope it does, because that can then set it, and then when they go out with the meter, just get a whole lot of people to drive past.
I'm happy to maybe pick up after this meeting that specific issue, and we can work through that and see how that's been dealt with.
Right, Tim?
As Christchurch is economically the most vibrant city in New Zealand at the moment, when we're looking at noise levels, etc., have we at all looked at other centres that are, like Tauranga is falling apart, Wellington's struggling, Auckland Central City is struggling? Because if you look at, say, New York and London, which I've been in both, London was better than New York with regards to noise management. And if you look at Camden as an example, Camden, when I was there, whilst I was not involved in it, was the murder capital of London. When they changed and they changed the environment, it is now like a good vibe and a cool vibe, and everybody now wants to be there. And I wish we were still there. But the key is, what are we trying to achieve? So what have we compared our noise when we compare noise levels with other centres? Are we also looking at how vibrant they are?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I think the answer is probably no. The assessment has been about what is the noise management regime in those centres, and how does that compare with the current district plan rules. You could do a comparison, but obviously there's quite a lot of assumptions and things you'd have to factor in to say how do you measure essentially vibrancy. And I guess the thing with that is there's an assumption that there's a correlation between a noise limit and the level of vibrancy. And I think what we've seen in the feedback to this plan change is that that's probably anecdotal. So there are a lot of people who have commented, you know, I lived in X city and they had higher noise limits and that was great, or it wasn't great because it killed off the residential activity in those areas. So I think you could potentially do a correlation, but there'd be a lot of assumptions about how much the noise actually factors into that, because obviously vibrancy is about a range of things.
Yeah, through the chair, I think we need to do something there, because you know the whole idea of this. And when we first started repairing the central city, the examples that were given to councillors were New York, London, and other centres. If you look at Camden, the pure simple thing there is that in activity it was dangerous. Activity, it is a lot safer and a vibrant place to be. So I don't know how to go forward on that, but there is, because the only constant is change, and so
Well, we can pick that up. We can pick it up. Yeah. I think. Thank you, Tim, because we know that we do want a vibrant central city. People want that. So I think it's an interesting question. Jake and then Sarah.
Thanks. Hate to encroach on the enforcement stuff, but it is a question we get often, which is around measurement, separate measurement of base. Is that possible? Do other cities do it? Pros, cons? Do you have any information on that?
At the risk of not directly answering the question, I know that in terms of the noise limits that have been recommended, that has taken into account in particular the base levels. So in the recommendations around the 65 and the 60, and that being based on the insulation requirements, that has taken into account the characteristic of noise, and particularly that what we're looking at is music venues which have a high level of bass. So yes, it has been factored in the sense of it's not, the recommendation hasn't been around that level of noise full stop, it's been around the level of noise associated with these types of venues.
From you, John, about that? No.
Finally, Sarah, just quickly, and then time's up.
Thanks. When you come back, John, with a workshop for the next council on enforcement of noise limits, can we look at the influence that we can have on how enforcement is done? And I know that there are rules around it, but if it comes down to a direction in a contract, those kind of things, and whether it just takes a little bit more resourcing to get a more consistent approach, actually with meters rather than just reckons, those kind of things, is that something that we can influence and that there are choices around? So just when that workshop happens, if you could come back on that.
Yes, we can do that.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, Yanni, time's up. So thank you very much for coming in and talking to us. It's brilliant. And me.
Yeah, that's an appreciation of the good work staff.
Is that on that?
So we're doing the exemptions next, is that?
Yes. Yeah.
No, we've got a briefing on the exemptions. So, I mean, the community might want to hear about that.
Okie doke.
That's the flip side. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Finally today, I'd like to welcome Darren and Mark, who will update us on the plan change program, plan stop and exemptions, on where we're at and where we're heading. Greetings.
Kia ora again, councillors. So yeah, we're coming to council tomorrow with a report where we need to make decisions on which plan changes we will apply for exemptions from the plan stop notice that was issued by government on the 16th of July. The plan stop notice tells us that we can't notify any new plan changes, and any plan changes that have been notified need to be withdrawn within 90 days from the 20th of August, which was the date that the most recent RM Amendment Act was given royal assent. Now, to be able to carry on with any of the plan changes, we have an option to apply for exemptions from the Minister. You'll also see that we have a couple of plan changes that fall into what are called automatic exemptions. And that's on the basis of natural hazards. That's one of the automatic exemptions criteria. So that's PC12, coastal hazards, PC17, two parts of 3. That would be flood management areas and activities in the Waimakariri stop bank setbacks. But there's also an earthworks part of that plan change that will also need an application for exemption.
So, sorry, they're automatic, can carry on?
Automatically, they can carry on, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we don't need to ask for any kind of agreement on that. We can just carry on with those.
Thank you.
Now, we are allowed, I guess one point that I'll make as we're going through this, we are allowed to keep preparing our plan changes in anticipation of the new legislation on resource management, which is anticipated to be in place by the end of December 2027. So we are allowed to keep preparing that in the meantime. So I think there's about 10 criteria in the Act. These are the ones that I've picked out that actually relate to the plan changes that we've currently got on our books and that we're currently trying to progress. One of the decisions that we're going to have to make, and it's going to be a tough one, we've had guidance from MFE and the staff at MFE, which basically goes around, does your plan change meet the criteria? These are the ones that I've picked out, or the team has picked out, which are relevant to our plan changes. Do they meet any of the discretionary criteria that the minister has the ability to apply? You'll notice the last one says any other reason that the minister considers appropriate. So some of them maybe, but I'll also update you on what we think that might mean. Again, based on the criteria and the guidance that we've had. Also, does the plan change align with any government priorities? And then what is the urgency of the plan change? Now, you will notice in the report that we've written for tomorrow, urgency is a big thing that we're grappling with because we've been told what is actually urgent, and that's something that we need to have a kind of a tough discussion about. So which one are we on? Yeah, and I guess those are the ones that we're talking about here. But government priorities, mainly economic growth, infrastructure investments, promoting resilience, and then moving on to the indications that we've had of what the reformed RM system will look like. Enjoyment of property rights, managing externalities. So anything where there might be an effect on your neighbours, then that's an issue. Anything where you don't have effect on neighbours, we've been told that's not an issue. And then the standardisation of the system. So anything that makes things simpler, the government, in theory, supports. So this is the bit about urgency. So you can see basically what we've been told. If an exemption is sought, we need to be able to deliver that in the next 2 years. And the question is, what is urgent within the next 2 years? So we can going through the criteria, the exemptions criteria, we can say yes, each plan change meets one of the criteria. However, we do need to still be selective. It's tempting to say, yeah, we can apply for all of them, but we've also had indicated to us that the minister might not look favourably on that, on the basis that the purpose of the plan stop notice was that actually we do stop plan changes. So we're just trying to work out what is reasonable. And then going through each of the plan changes, I'll quickly skip through these, but this reflects a a kind of a more detailed assessment that I've attached to tomorrow's report. So we have Plan Change 7, which is about managing significant Indigenous vegetation. That came about following clearance of Indigenous vegetation on Kaitariti Spit. We were on the verge of being taken to court, but we came to an agreement to progress Plan Change 7. So there are actually currently rules in legal effect, and there is a legal issue overhanging. And then with the various updates to the NPS on Indigenous biodiversity, we've also been told, I guess we also got to the stage where we were thinking about a variation to Plan Change 7 so that we did better reflect the NPS. However, I've marked that potentially as low urgency, because to get that through in the next 2 years, we would need to notify a variation to the existing plan change, which has, as you can see, has been notified, and go through the whole process again. So that's my suggestion there. Plan Change 17, as I noted, that's about earthworks. We currently, So we've come to you before. This hasn't, all of the plan changes now that I'm talking about haven't yet been notified. So on this basis, we would be applying for an exemption to be able to notify in the next 2 year period. We have the issue about sediment in our waterways. So as I've noted, flood management areas, Waimakariri stop bank setbacks, they're automatic. We would be applying just to retain the earthworks part of that plan change. Plan Change 20, about the industrial interface, we've recently had a pre-notification engagement on that. One of the key points to note is that all existing activities will have existing use rights. So that plan change applies going forward, but it can't fix any issues that are on the ground now. And then through the pre-notification engagement on PC20, we received a number of requests to rezone land, primarily from industrial to residential. So what we thought potentially is the rezoning plan change that has been kind of sitting in the background and has taken a kind of a lower priority to date could be combined with those requests through PC20. And that would include the larger sites, potentially that fits, as you were speaking about, Exemption H, the minister's, what he considers appropriate. That potentially could fit in there. It supports economic growth. Then we also have Plan Change 21, Central City Noise, that we've just discussed. We think that's a high urgency. And one of the other plan changes that's being developed as well is about moving the Flatwater Sports Hub from the right bank to the left bank along Kerrs Reach on the Otakara. So the big question that we've got, which it's not an easy answer because we haven't been able to grapple with it ourselves, but the big question we've got is which of those plan changes do we choose? Do we accept that some of them might be sacrificial to ensure that other ones carry on? And we have to make that decision tomorrow. I note that in the, I've covered it anyway, but in the recommendations, there are two versions of PC7. That's the one that's been notified and the potential variation. So that would be choosing between those two. And then there's also the recommendation around PC20 and the rezoning plan change. I guess just throwing it out there, we would recommend if you were predisposed to apply for any of those, we would prefer the PC7 that's been notified version. And then if you were of the opinion of applying for any of the rezoning, we would think that a combination of PC20 and the rezoning plan change on the larger sites that support economic growth would have a better chance of gaining an exemption. Thank you.
Just briefly to add to what Darren's talked about and the broader context, the RMA is set to be replaced. That's a given. The proposed acts to replace the RMA will be introduced to Parliament later this year. The current timeline indicated is that they will be passed, they'll be gazetted by the end of next year. I anticipate that's before the election next year. And the indication is then the government, Ministry for the Environment would prepare a national framework of standards that applies to all councils, and that's to achieve consistency. It's also indicated that they'll be more prescriptive of what is in place in each region. So consistent set of zones, potentially a consistent set of rules. So let's say a residential zone is the same height limit across different residential zones, regardless of the city. And then when that national framework has been defined, each region then needs to prepare a plan which would replace the 10 district plans in Canterbury. Now, the key question today is if we are going to expend resources in terms of advancing those plan changes that we seek and get exemptions for, we need to demonstrate there's a need for that to be done. By need, I'm talking about what would happen if we don't address it before the new planning framework is developed at a regional level. And in terms of that, what matters can be deferred and be considered as part of that broader regional planning framework. So Darren's set out the recommendations in the report tomorrow. We've received feedback to date from a number of you, which has guided the recommendations, particularly with reference to Plan Change 21. And really, this is an opportunity to have that discussion and ask questions before tomorrow.
Excellent. So really, we've just got to, and I know what you've put in for tomorrow, but we've just got to be realistic and make sure that we don't, I dare say some councils will go along and try and put everything in, but you'd have to expect some pushback and be able to defend your decision to put it in. So, okay, I look forward to that tomorrow. So the first question is from Tyrone out in cyberspace.
Kia ora. Thank you, Your Worship. So when would Plan Change 20 come before council, do you reckon? Or like, what's the sort of the general timeline on it?
So Plan Change 20 on industrial, I don't have the timeline to hand, but any plan change, we'll be coming back to you with, subject to the exemptions being approved, and that being one of them, we anticipate acting quickly and bringing it back to you early in the new term.
Okay, cool. And so, you know, the one that you and I have talked about, Mark, around Norwich Quay and Littleton, where does that leave that?
Based on the current statutory framework of the regional policy statement and our own district plan policy, a reduction in the port noise overlay is really our advice is that's not palatable at the moment. I consider that's best addressed in terms of the future plan.
Right. So, what options do I have to advocate for that not to happen? I mean, for that to be, you know, included in things that we do.
I mean, if you were minded to, we can consider that, and depending on the decision tomorrow, there's the plan change to combine Plan Change 20 and a rezoning plan change, and we could consider that overlay in the context of that zoning plan change. It does add a level.
I would really like that to happen.
Pardon?
I would really like that to happen, please.
Just noting it would add a level of complexity and require further technical work, so we'd need to consider that further, but we'll take your direction.
Were you indicating there's an issue with the RPS as well, were you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's currently a policy in the RPS about avoidance of effects on strategic infrastructure, including Littleton Port. And the reason for the overlay is to minimise the risk of complaints and limitations on the port's operation. And so reducing or removing the overlay could have that effect.
But it has been in place since 1999, and it's time for a review, really. But anyway, we've had an earthquake since then.
Thank you, Tyrone. You all done there, mate? You done?
Yep.
Thank you. Tim, please.
Thank you, and I apologise, my laptop died on me, so it's away getting miraculously fixed. For the slide before PC7, at the, sorry, I don't have my laptop on me, but was mentioning at the bottom about the minister, so I'm just wondering, with an election next year, a national election next year, do we know the effects, if there were a government change, the ministry, is the ministry still going to pursue this, or, I mean, do we have to make allowances? I'm just a bit concerned that we're going to spend a lot of time, although we have to because of time frames set. So how would that affect what we're doing? Will this not affect it at all if there was a change of attitude at by the minister rather than ministry? So, yeah, it's a purely one.
So just to clarify, your question is if there's a change in terms of government, would that change the
process and what we're doing, the timings?
I mean, we can only act in the context of the current government and its direction. There's recognition, I mean, putting some context behind this plan stop announcement, councils up and down the country under the RMA are required to review their whole district plan every 10 years and also align with national planning standards. We saw some merit in this plan stop insofar as we didn't want to invest millions of dollars and go through a multi-year process to review our whole plan if we were only a year or two later then starting to prepare a new plan. So the plan stop has some merit from a staff perspective. Okay. What we perhaps didn't anticipate would be that a stop would be put on all plan changes without an exemption. So we need to work within that, and if that changes, we'll need to adapt. But I mean, in terms of expending resources, there's some merit of us focusing on the plan changes. Council really wants to progress and dedicating some urgency to those as opposed to continuing with the full breadth of our plan change program as it stands.
Thank you. Second question is with PC17, sediment in the waterways, are you saying that that's the next slide, I think from PC7, after following PC7, is that, so are you saying that that's going to be exempt from, because that's obviously a huge issue, and since Geoffrey Palmer introduced the RMA decades ago, our knowledge of the problems within the issues with the environment have changed. So is this saying that sediment and waterways, they're streamlining the consents, is that lowering the protection or is that changing it?
I would say I wouldn't say it was lowering protection, but it's a rationalisation of the requirements that are currently in the district plan. So that includes better protection on sites when development is going on to stop runoff into the waterways. So
that's raising that requirement rather than status quo.
It improves the requirement, but there's also aspects of the plan that are currently inefficient, which will also be corrected through that part of the plan change. In terms of the effect on waterways, that is one of the criteria that comes under the discretionary exemptions that we could apply for.
Thank you. And my final question is, with as we are acknowledging there's a cost of living crisis, could we find out what the cost of to ratepayers will be to transfer the Kerrs Reach from one side of the river to the other? Because if we're kind of stacking things up to look at it through urgency, I would be lowering that because of, we're struggling to lower our rates. So I just want to know what that cost is to the ratepayers of Christchurch.
Thank you.
Just to clarify that, we'll come back to you with further advice on that, but you're asking about not only the cost of the plan change, but the capital cost. Yeah.
To be fair, Tim, the capital cost of moving across is with the rowing clubs and stuff like that. It's just the plan change that I think.
Well, I'd like to know if there is a cost to the ratepayers and what will it be.
Okay.
As simple as that. Thank you. Cheers.
Look, I can provide that, but at the moment we're still spending Crown money, but I'll get it clarified for you.
Right, thank you. Good-io. Sarah, please. Good-io again. Melanie.
With So with PC7, and you've given us in the report a couple of options, why have you given us those options when we really should just do the variation when it says it will align with the MPSIB? Like, I'm sort of confused about why the option's been provided.
So, as given the Plan Stop announcement, we were acting with pace to get a decision from you before the election, given the 90-day limit for applying for an exemption.
Yeah.
The recommendation on the papers was an either-or scenario. What Darren was conveying was his staff advice that the first of those two options should be considered as the preferred option of advancing the plan change as notified. Just as some broader context to add what Darren spoke about, plan change 7 was notified back in 2021. It was delayed somewhat, namely because of the multiple iterations of national direction that came from the previous government and this government in terms of changes to that national policy statement. And it was we delayed the plan change to best align with that national direction. Now, the variation that is on the slide was to better align it with the current national policy statement. Bearing in mind what was notified back in 2021 was aligning with the previous version of the national policy statement. So it's trying to keep pace with the national direction. Even if we don't advance the variation, the decision makers on that plan change would still need to consider how the plan change aligns to the current national direction. So it's just limited in terms of the scope of what changes we can make to best align with that national direction by what's been submitted on and what was notified, rather than doing a variation to make broader changes that would be ideal.
So you're saying it's faster, basically?
Faster to go with the original plan change as notified, because the variation puts us back to notifying it.
So if we did the variation, would that get done in the 2 years?
I mean, the current statutory time frame for any plan change from notification to a decision is 2 years. So we've got a statutory duty to do it within 2 years.
Okay. And then another question, why is Kerr's Reach, which had a low, I can't think it was low, to moderate urgency, why is that put ahead of something like, say, the old favourite about trees on development property and getting the financial contributions, which has got a moderate to high or moderate urgency? Why is that one being put ahead of that?
It reflects in part the level of work and investment in terms of time and cost to date. The Kerr's progress is a key factor. The Kerr's Reach plan change to facilitate the relocation there's a draft plan change with supporting reports practically ready to go, and given the broader outcomes we're seeking for the corridor, the Otakara Avon River corridor, and that piece in the puzzle, it's considered strategically important from a council standpoint. The tree canopy plan change, granted it's also a priority for the council as signalled through plan change 14, but because of capacity, we haven't advanced further work since it was dismissed through plan change 14.
Victoria?
Oh, thank you. I'm keen to understand if your recommendations fit within our current resource budget.
They do, yes.
Yeah. And then, more particularly with that resource budget, noting that the RMA reform anticipated before 2027, with the details unknown, including the expectations and timeline, and we've been told that you can continue working on that. Just keen to understand, have we got staff working on that presently?
On the new plan?
On the RMA reform?
Absolutely.
Without knowing what's coming at us, I'm just keen to understand that.
Yeah. So in terms of what's coming with the reform, we've obviously been making submissions that you've been approving to the different amendment bills that have been to the RMA. In terms of what's emerging, we're having dialogue at a Canterbury planning managers level already about how we work more closely. There has been a forum under the Canterbury Mayoral Forum. There's that staff forum of planning managers, and top of the agenda is obviously working towards how can we better align and start transitioning to a new system. Still early days, but there's that dialogue happening at least. It's, as you said, it's difficult without seeing more detail. We are relying on the expert advisory group's report, independent of government, who made recommendations to Cabinet, and Cabinet have signed off on the principles. We are also having preliminary discussions about what does that mean for council in terms of resourcing, and what would that mean in terms of where the resource needs to be
So
allocated.
it's about readiness for it when it does come.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
with the view that we develop options and then crystallise that and have a preferred way forward once the legislation lands.
Okay. That's good. Thank you, Darren and Mark. And that brings us to the end. Sorry, Yanni, yeah? Far away, yeah?
So, in terms of PC20, so I'm just unclear from the council report. In 4.4.1, you've listed the discretionary ones that we need to apply for an exemption. Is there a preferred option of which ones that staff are recommending? It just says selected exemptions, but I'm unclear as to which ones.
So the recommendations under recommendation 3, in terms of proposed plan change 7,
okay, cool.
Proposed plan change 7, it's A Roman numeral I of proposed plan change 7 without the variation, and then recommendation 3, letter B, Roman numeral 3 of a combined plan change that combines both rezoning and industrial.
I'm just trying to understand. So a combined plan change, rezoning elements of each of the following plan changes. Is that, sorry, so so plan 20 would get lumped in with plan change 21 and Kerr's Reach and...
No, so C, D and E are separate.
Okay, so...
What's Roman numeral 3 signals that there were, on the current books, there's 2 plan changes. There's plan change 20 on industrial that you're aware of, and a separate plan change on rezoning of properties. It's proposed to combine those 2 because there is overlap between them. One thing that we've been looking at in plan change 20 has been the rezoning of properties at the interface of residential boundaries.
Right. Okay.
Because rather than trying to amend the rules for setbacks, landscaping and so forth, in some cases the better outcome is simply to rezone the land from industrial to something else to manage that buffer.
Right. I just trying to understand how to explain this to the public. So plan change 20 I think is incredibly high priority. I know you've got, I think, moderate, but actually the impacts are very real. One of the comments in the slide is that the existing activities will not be, sorry, I just,
not change existing
yeah,
use
it
rates.
says it will not change existing use rates or resolve the effects from existing activities, but my understanding with like noise, for example, like with PC21, it does actually have an ability to change the outcomes that happen in terms of the community. So if we change the noise limits around industrial activities, that does have an impact on existing operations.
It's certainly complicated in terms of noise, but the point being made there is a business that's lawfully established, say 20 years ago, and is continuing to operate in the same manner, would not be affected by the new rules because they have their existing use rights from when they first established, if the effects are similar. Noise, it's more complicated because the ability for them to demonstrate what the noise levels were 20 years ago and how they compare to now is more challenging. So noise, it's fraught, but in terms of the principle of existing use rights, that is the basis of any activity on the ground that exists now, that if it was established lawfully, when it came about, they can continue what they established.
So just to put it into context of like the noise plan change 21, so basically effectively bars that are there now or residents that are there now, even if we put that plan change through and got it approved, the bars would have to comply with the lower noise limit, but if they set up next door in a new building in a new business, they could have a higher noise limit.
So I'll give 2 scenarios. So the in the central city, there'll be bars, live music venues that are lawfully established and comply with the current rules. If we increase the noise limits, then they can increase their sound levels to those new noise limits, but only in those defined areas. The second scenario is bar or live music venues existing is not lawfully established. They would need to comply with the new rules.
Yanni, you're more than welcome to have a yarn directly to Mark after this because we're over time.
Okay, so just the
yep.
other thing, like piece of feedback from me is, like, and I put this through when we got the announcement from government, we need some sort of political lobbying strategy or government relations strategy. We should be meeting with the local MPs and highlighting which ones are important to us and building up a support base from the local members of parliament to get what we want from government. And I'm concerned that we just go to the minister and we go to the officials, but at a political level or at a governance level, I think there's more we could be doing to try and get better outcomes for our city. So is anyone meeting with or briefing local members of parliament, particularly the government ones?
On PC20?
Well, no, on the request for the exemptions and why we want the exemptions that we do.
It's a different question. Okay, enough. Right, we've run out of time. If you want to talk to Mark more, or you want to come and have yarn to me, that's cool. Right, thank you, Darren and Mark. That brings us to the end of today's workshops, and that closes the meeting. And just don't everyone run away just at the moment, please.